We are live again. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there. So I got a brand new mic here and trying that out, making sure the audio settings are good with that. So we will see how that works tonight. And I appreciate everyone's patience. So let's get the stream pulled back up here. All right, sorry about that. And we will get started with, so just for the other viewers who watch the replay, let's just get started from the beginning again. Welcome to Thursday night at round 3. We're very lucky to have National Master Oke here per usual. Welcome, Oke.
Hello.
Gonna start with just a few quick announcements here. So we have upcoming training camp. Pretty exciting that if anyone watched the coverage from the Minneapolis Open, we had International Master Zweber on doing commentary. You know, he also did 12 broadcasts on Thursday nighters in the past. And Zweber is going to be doing weekend commentary, and Oke is mostly going to be doing our Thursday night commentary going forward. And luckily, Zweber is coming into town to play in Chicago and Vegas, and we're going to bring him to Minnesota in between the two events. And he's going to give us a training camp and also play in a professional match against our 3-time state champion, Sammy. So this is the training camp. It's going to be Friday, May 30th, and $50 for the training camp. It's going to be 5 hours, so 3 hours of lectures and a mix of training games versus the other players and blitz against Zweber. And then 2 hours of a tandem simul against Zweber and National Master Oke here. So we'll all try to take down the channel masters. Should be a fun night. Thanks for playing in that simul, Oke. And we're looking forward to taking you on. Next up, we're going to just show you that Masters match flyer. So we got I Am Sammy. He's the he's an international master locally. He's 3-time state champion, and he's president of the University of Minnesota Chess Club. He also has commented on the channel before one time, and we'll hopefully get him back in the future commentating as well. And then we've got Zweber here. I am with 3 GM norms, so he just needs the rating for that GM title. And he's 2-time South Asian champion and regular broadcaster on our channel. So very strong player from India. And they will be playing the following 2 days. So May 31st and June 1st, there'll be a classical game each day. We'll also be broadcasting those. I'm not sure who. I'm going to try to get a title player to broadcast that with me, and as well as Connor one day. So we're going to see who that is, because our usual masters are all going to be playing in the events. We got Oke also is going to be playing in the tournaments alongside this event, so he won't be available, but we'll see who we can get for that. But it should be pretty exciting. Basically a pro match. You can go watch it live in person if you play in the Return Think, and that's the flyer that I'm going to mention here next. So, okay, the Return Think is a parallel tournament to that professional match. And so Oke here is going to be playing in the Return Think. And this is a 7-round tournament. All the details are here, and you can actually find all the details on the website per usual. But, you know, this is a special event because you will get to witness that pro match happening in the same room as this tournament. So, yeah, basically it's just kind of a fun weekend special event. And definitely encourage everyone to check it out. So with that, we will get into the player profile. So this week, we have Torfi as our featured player. I'm just going to make sure the stream is going here. I believe it is, but just want to triple check.
Okay.
I believe it is. I just want to get it pulled up here so I can see that chat. All right, well, I'm going to continue with the profile. Okay, so Torfi, peak rating of 1894. But that's definitely, he's upsets a lot of stronger players than that. So I would say, definitely representing some almost stronger strength than that. Here's his lifetime record. We're seeing a lifetime winning record, so always good to see that. Wanted to pull up a recent tournament of Torfi's where he basically totally crushed the field. This was a casual action Swiss played very recently, and he finished with 5.5 out of 6. In second place, looks like finished with 3. So crushed the field by 2.5 points, including Eddie Wasserman here, and Josh Rajadura.
Wow.
Those are the 2 names I recognize immediately. And I want to just pull up some of his best wins as well. He's got a win against Master Charles Waugh. He beat Nathan Hoover, probably on a Thursday night. Dane Zagar, and I saw he's actually got multiple wins against Dane, so that's pretty impressive. Eddie Wasserman, John Blomer, and David McNeil are all some of his best wins. And Thomas Babcock is one of his best draws, National Master. So always good to see that. And yeah, that's the whole profile. So yeah, with that, let's get into the game.
Okay. I would like to make one comment added to the profile that I actually happened to be sitting next to Torfi during his win against Charles Hua, and it was pretty impressive. In that same tournament, I think he also beat Dane Zagar. It was the Golden Gopher of 24. And yeah, he was on a giant killing spree that tournament.
Always good to chain them together. That's the best way to do it. That's how you get the big tournament wins.
So let's see what's happening today. Today he's facing a formidable foe in the person of Miles Tisserand, and starts off with his favorite F4, to which Miles responds with the From Gambit, and Torfi accepts. So I suspect that players of the Bird take the From Gambit almost as the ultimate challenge. They need to beat back these Neanderthals who don't want to respect their opening, type of thing.
I'm a little worried there's a problem. I'm just gonna broadcast on the channel.
I'm actually watching the broadcast on another tab,
and it's working.
It's working, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm having trouble pulling up on my cell phone.
Jack Wally just commented in the chat, we will have a blindfold match at the training camp. Torfi is very dangerous and can play master level chess sometimes.
All right. Perfect. Well, why don't you continue, and I'm just gonna triple check or try to get synced up here. Sorry about the technical difficulties to start here.
Okay. So let's go back to the game here. So it's an interesting approach that Miles is taking, going directly at Torfi, and Torfi plays d3, which I believe is at least partially meant to give his king an escape in case of rook takes h4, knight takes h4, queen takes h4, so that it doesn't get mated right away. And that's what happens, is rook takes h4. But now, we have a bit of a surprise for Miles. And the question now is, who exactly is being tricked here. And at the end of the complications, we have an interesting material imbalance. I should say, as we proceed with the complications, because the complications aren't ended yet. And all of a sudden, Torfi is up in material by a lot. That said, his king is exposed, and so it's not clear if...
So it looks like Miles might have, fallen into that trap of trying a bit too hard to punish that. That's
Yes.
just that contempt. Like, oh man, F4. I'm just gonna crush this thing, and I'm gonna sack a queen,
Exactly.
make it happen, and a few minutes later, you're like, what's going on with my life? What happened here?
Yes. It's like you start off the game, you see F4, you say, I'm going to moita the bum, and then things don't work out that way. So it's still a fight though, because the white king is exposed, and white has on paper has a material advantage, but you can't really talk about a material advantage when all the material is still in the garage on A1 and H1. So we'll see if Miles is able to keep the threats going long enough to prevent Torfi from developing. Yeah.
So I am seeing, those rooks are not developed yet, so I guess it's a little hard to believe that he's going to really organize something here. But what is actually the material balance here? So you got just 2 pieces for the queen, or
2 pieces for the queen and 2 pawns.
Yeah.
So using the old Reinfeld values, Torfi's 5 pawns ahead. But again, his king is still exposed. There's already a threat to get 2 pawns back, 2 pawns of material back, with the threat of knight c2, which I think Torfi was wise in just saying, okay, have at it. I need to get my pieces coordinated.
Yeah,
Oh.
If I was Miles, I wouldn't really be eager to pick up rook a1. I
No. No, the knight the knight is much more annoying alive than dead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
And now all of a sudden, he may not have a choice about the matter. Oh, this is knight d4 is actually meaner than I thought initially. It on the surface, the first thing is, oh, I guess he's preventing knight c2 from happening. But more importantly, he's threatening a really nice family fork on e6.
Yep, nice pin.
Yep. And so, yeah,
Yes.
we'll see whether Miles is able to solve this or if Torfi is able to bring home the point. But I think at this... Yeah.
We'll see. I feel like Torfi's going to win this.
Yeah, no, Torfi, I've seen Torfi in action, and this one, I think, is a done deal. He, now that he's one move from connecting his rooks, I think it's pretty much, but you never know. So that's why we watch the movie to the end. All right. Well, let's maybe go back to start. Should we quickly look at the games that are completed first, maybe.
All right,
And
we got some bloodshed already.
yeah, uh, seems like Eddie went about doing Eddie things against Jason. So let's see what's going on here. I
Yeah,
wonder
nice.
whether Bishop B5 has now supplanted D4 for good as the main move in this position.
Well, hold up here. Whoa, whoa. I'm saying Jason playing D6. Like what? What is going on here? Jason is a classical Sicilian diehard, to my knowledge. So, what's
Oh, I didn't know
what's
that part. So this is
is he branching into Nidorf or playing Dragon? I mean, I imagine Dragon would be more likely because he's buddies with the Dragon main, but who's now branching into classical Sicilian UV. Uh,
oh, okay, okay.
but
And they're close
this
buddies.
is an interesting dynamic. Yep. Maybe he's just trying to surprise Eddie. He likes to get Jason did once tell me that he likes playing Eddie because it's a new game every game, but
Hmm.
Nidorf is risky because Eddie plays Nidorf himself.
Well, the memo I got is that with very rare um, exceptions, the Najdorf is effectively dead in chess
Oh,
because
really?
everybody plays Bishop B5 on move 3.
Well, yeah. So I guess this is like the Moscow, right? It's kind of Ross Lima's little brother, or
Yes, something like that. So, okay, let's see how this develops. So we have Maroxy Light, I suppose, or I am liking White's position.
all right. There appears there might be some audio issues. My girlfriend is telling me. So if anyone in the chat is noticing audio issues, please tell me. And I guess we'll stop it and try to get those fixed since I am on a new audio setup. But I think we'll just keep going for the moment. I don't know. Apologize in advance if the audio is cutting in and out. I will be continuing to tune all the audio settings this week. So let's just see how it works. So sorry about that.
What
We can
works?
continue.
So in this position, H4 is played, and it's often a difficult question to answer whether one should play H3 in these kind of positions. On one hand, allowing black to play H3 may disrupt the king side a bit, but on the other hand, playing H3 oneself, that is speaking of white, means that black has a hook for G5, G4. So we'll see. Eddie decided to ignore what was going on. And then maybe he's right, because in these sort of positions, you don't want to open lines for the opponent's pieces if you don't have to.
Yep.
Especially now that it's clear it's going to be a opposite. It's now an opposite castling king position, and white needs to start creating open lines for himself on the queen side if he's going to have any real hope. Oh, oh, ouch. I've seen this one before. And just like that, there's a piece gone. It seems.
My one point I wanted to make on the H3 dynamic is
Mm-hmm.
my current understanding. Yeah, I don't think I'd like to play H3 there either because if he plays H3, I can probably play G3, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
And keep lines closed. Yeah.
if I've already played G3, so if I have a Catalan type structure, and they're
Mm-hmm.
approaching me with a fast h5, right, and threatening h4, then I love to play h3, because when they play
Hmm.
h4, I'm gonna play g4, you know,
Got it.
and I'm anchored there. So that's
Okay.
just my little pattern I like, but just a random point.
No, no, it's not a random point. It's actually a very important practical point because these sort of situations occur regardless of the openings played, and so it's I think useful to have some guidance on how to approach it. Now, this position is interesting. So, black lost a piece, but it's not clear how the white knight gets out alive from e7. And so Eddie solves the problem in a typical Eddie way with tactics,
Getting pretty scary.
which, yeah, which I should make mention of the fact that the tactic is based on the fact that the black queen doesn't have that many squares. And so it's forced to abandon defense of c6. So this is actually a pretty nice tactic that Eddie found with knight c6, because at the end of that, there's an exchange hanging. So let me see. After you do the math, so white will end up exchange and position ahead.
Oh,
Ooh,
not even taking the exchange.
ooh.
Yeah,
It's like remember in the other game you were mentioning.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking the exact same. Like that's what Miles wants to do with his knight. I don't think he's gonna quite get this pulled off in his game, but it's
This is mean.
yeah.
Bang.
Checkmate.
So
Checkmate ends the game. So Eddie's like, I don't need your rook.
yep, we don't need no stinking rooks. No, this is and Eddie's steadfast in not opening lines on the king side, which I think is instructive. Um, that said,
Yeah, Jason's trying his best here. That's a lot of high
Jason,
context.
yep, Jason's trying his best, and I think that Eddie is going to be just in time. Now, um, huh? What's the time situation? If
It's
Queen takes
50,
knight,
55
oh, the
minutes.
h8 rook is hanging. Yeah, yeah. Wow. And did you notice something? The you notice that the time remaining for Eddie Wasserman is way too high for his health. He actually has 55 minutes left here in this position, which is, as you know, is not normal for him. But I think the error with allowing 95 made things simpler for him. At this moment, it's mate in one, regardless of where Jason goes. So this is a very nice game by Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie knows his 95 sacks. We saw him mate Nathan. Uh, Not the exact same
Yeah, yeah.
scenario, but he's looking for it.
I think in the game against Nathan, it was actually a pure sacrifice. It wasn't like a sham sacrifice. It was like it wasn't even down material for some time, but um, Black's king was way open. If
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. It was just directly winning. Not even
Yes.
not even really risking anything. But
Well, it is a risk if you don't know how to handle it, right? So
so what? Just coming back to the exact moment under that piece. What was the better move? I kind of missed that.
let's see. So I think once
Yeah, yeah.
this arrived,
This is typical motif. You see the queens aligned with each other. They're always it's a free tempo. It reminds me of some I just saw a crazy puzzle where you end. Yeah, the queen. I'm not going to describe the puzzle, but yeah, it reminds me. There's a lot of puzzles like this. I feel like it's my favorite. I used to try to do this against the dragon before I played,
Hmm.
against D6 dragon. I would play.
Hmm.
They play D5, and I play King B1, and then they play D takes C4. If they play D takes C4, then they hang in knight D5 because Queen takes D2 no longer comes with check,
Yes.
and then you're gonna play knight takes E7. But so this is that typical motif, but it's just actually hitting it the opposite way, hitting them with the queen side
Yes.
instead of the king side castle. And sadly, I'm just noticing this dynamic for the first time. King C8 and King G8, they get checked on E7 the same way. So
Yes.
you're always vulnerable to knight takes E7 threats, no matter which way you castle. So it's kind of funny to see it happen on the queen side. I don't know if I've ever seen that, but
I think I might have actually been able to exploit this similar tactic on the white side before. Not from a. It was some other entry into a Maroxy bind situation like this. Maybe it started with knight f3 and a symmetrical English, but yeah. At this point, once the black player notices this vis-a-vis between the queen on d2 and the queen on a5, you have to start looking for what's loose, which is this guy. And so I would think candidates for how to address this would include moves that defend the bishop in advance, or maybe a move that moves the king out of firing range, right? So if so, maybe king here is even possible. Yeah, there is the problem. There is a problem that maybe a knight on c6 later could cause an issue. But okay, that's further away. And in any case, knight d5 is not working because there's no intermezzo. Check on e7.
yeah, I think this also shows that the queen is just such a huge tactical target in early middle game. It's like because it reminds me. This actually reminds me of two other tactics. It reminds me of you could, even if we're not castled queenside in a kind of exposed manner like this, let's just imagine the king's more in the center on the king's side, and queen's on c7. You can play rook c, and then let's play the rook. Let's move the rook over to c1. A lot of times, and then let's move their d7 knight down to c6. So a lot of changes, right? But
Oh yes,
now
yes,
you can also play knight d5 potentially. Maybe it doesn't work there, right? You got to be a little careful that for some counter tactics. But
yes.
they can take it for free with their pawn, but you play c takes, and now you're pinning knight c6 to queen c7, and you're going to win the knight back with interest potentially, at least positional interest. That's one tactic
Yes.
it reminds me of, and then also, let's say the queen was exposed on c7, and we had like a queen on f3 against like a French, OK's favorite. Let's say you played an early c5 against Teresh, and you get an open French structure with that queen on c7 is on a lot of times a vulnerable piece. So the reason it reminds me of it is just because unprotected queens a lot of times can get just targeted, and what'll happen is the queen will get white will shift their queen over to queen g3, hit that queen c7 when black tries to play like e4 or something, or tempo on the queen, or various situations, and then when they play queen takes g3, they'll hit them with knight takes e7, or they'll hit them with some intermezzo check that queen was covering. So I'm just always a little scared to have my queen unprotected on c7 or a5 in the early middle game. Worried about tactics, but that's of course an overgeneralization.
No, but in this case, there's a specific concern, and unfortunately for Jason, he didn't realize the danger, and yeah, I just felt for this instructive tactic. But one of the things that um, psychologically, I think you land a tactical blow and you're justifiably proud of yourself. But how do you bring home the bacon? And seeing the tactical blow being a piece up is one thing, but knowing how to bring the point home is another one. And I think Eddie's solution here was really, really nice. And this Queen D4 was like I don't know, icing on top. Just we're going to get the material edge in a better way this time. And controlling, I think H4, understanding that he had H4 in reserve was also important to maintaining the win, and then remaining tactically alert to the fact that the knight can escape to A5, which is more functional than going knight B4, for example. It was also huge.
My only other question about this game would be, was there any more clinical way to shut down the kingside pawn storm for white than what, I mean, clearly what he did worked out, but if it was me, I'd be playing with the computer and analysis, even earlier, seeing, does it want me to actually push any of these pawns, or does it want me to, was there a way to just close everything perfectly? And it looks like, what he did worked out, and maybe that was the best possible way, but I'd want to be learning for the future. Is there just a brain dead way to shut down all this counterplay from black and make sure it's never going to happen?
I mean, one could argue, after here, I suppose one could make an argument in favor of H3 now, right? With the idea that, so if H3, then we know that black isn't getting an open H file, right? And queen can capture, maybe.
That's it. Why
king capture?
That feels like I'm exposing myself. Why not queen takes?
Queen takes is doable as well.
I mean, I'm still. It's a nice diagonal hitting that king too. So.
Yes. Yeah. So both are possible, and I think at least here, white only has to worry about the half open G file, and so this would be maybe.
Uh-oh. We just lost. Okay, so bear with us for a moment. Probably just pause the stream until we recover it. And we're back live.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. Just some technical difficulties, but hopefully got those resolved.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about the approach to defending against the pawn advances, and I think Eddie's way was good, and of course he's more than willing to calculate when need be, so it's fine. I was just mentioning maybe if you didn't want to do as much calculation, probably H3 would be a possibility. And then if G takes F2, then either king or queen takes F2.
I wonder if he's worried about rook H6 before GF2. So H3.
Sorry.
H3, rook H6. Mm-hmm. Is that an issue? Not really. Guess you could still get ready to recapture the queen.
Yes, or you could play queen F3 as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe not my choice per se, but that seems valid as well.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be too hard to win piece up here. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really hard.
especially
It's
with
hard to imagine Black ever crashing through without just some epic blunder.
yes, and I was going to mention too the double agent on G2, right? Once H4 is happening, then G2 can often be one of the better defenders for the white king. You don't take it, just leave it there, right? And play around it. And that might be a square that black might otherwise have wanted to be open. But yeah, that was an impressive game by Eddie. Let's see what's happening in Terry Humphreys versus Mitch Ross. So, Scandinavian
Yep, Mitch
with
means the
D6.
Scandi. Mitch is a hard studying player. He does puzzles with me and Connor.
Ah, okay.
So he does Connor's sharing his screen doing his 2600 early chess puzzles, and Mitch is doing his best to keep up, but he does actually pretty well. So I'm optimistic Mitch is gonna be one of the improving players for sure.
Cool. Yeah, this is
I don't know too much about Terry.
yeah, I'm not sure I've played Terry before. I think I have, but I haven't played him enough to be able to give a good discussion on his style or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. So maybe I'm going through this too fast. So in this position here, there might have been an argument in favor of E5, playing for E5, not E5 immediately, but
I mean, this looks pretty equal to me. Maybe I'm
oh,
off base on
yeah,
that.
black I think has a little bit of a niggle, not
Yeah, I like Black's position better actually for sure. With that backward
yeah,
D3 pawn. But
and then
look, White's glorious Catalan bishop resorted to a lowly D3 pawn defender. Can't hate on that.
so yeah, I think at this moment, black seems to have the better position. He's putting pressure on white's position, and white's basically defending. And now black is trying to exchange off the better of white's minor pieces, which white agrees with. And now, okay, maybe black is dealing with a little bit of inconvenience. The pawn on b6 being weak.
Got Alcan's gun there.
Yeah. Now here, um, this is a tougher one to answer correctly. So the pawn on b6 is attacked 3 times, defended twice. However, sometimes you have to think, is it worthwhile giving up my weakness so I can grab theirs, or maybe create a new weakness for them to worry about? And it would seem like in order to capture the b6 pawn, white will have to give up the defense of the a3 pawn. So maybe something like, I don't know, creating Luft or maybe something like this, and allowing this to happen might have been an option to consider. only because after this guy is attacked, and rook a1 might be an issue with the pin against the bishop. Of course, black has to worry about the c5 pawn being weak. So I'm not saying this is like what he should play, but it's something to consider anyway.
You know, I was actually thinking along similar lines, but a little different. I was thinking it's good. It's okay to play a little passive for the moment because I don't really want to kick all those tactics off while I have back rank issues.
Mm-hmm.
But just logically, but I mean, clearly you just got to calculate. But then, so I was also I was kind of thinking maybe play, rook a6 or rook b8 like he played is seems okay. I don't know, maybe rook a6, keep it on the,
I prefer rook a6.
the bishop's lined up there, but it's kind of hard to imagine, both those pawns getting out of the way. And now I'm still pressuring a3, and then, and then and then I was also thinking make left first and then think about what I want to do next. But the way I was going to make
Mm-hmm.
left was h6 in my mind. And
Mm-hmm.
I like your move with f6. You're clearly, endgame oriented. But why not make left where our king can come towards the center in the endgame? So I like, anyways, random point, but I
No,
think
it's not a random point actually, because
I like your f6 better than my h6 that came to my mind.
oh,
And my
no,
move,
I think
and I played it slow. I wanted to defend and then make left instead of just let's do it right now.
no, I think both approaches are fine. I have a problem with rook b8 though, because the problem with rook b8 isn't just that it's a bit passive; it's that he's now created a new um, tactical liability because of a4, because of the threat of a4 a5. It's often it's a rule of thumb, but often if you can defend, if you need to defend a pawn with a rook, um, it's often better if you can defend it from the side than from behind it, as unless we're talking about passed pawns in the endgame or whatever. But in this sort of position, because of the risk of a4 a5, now all of a sudden black's position is have become dicey.
Yeah, you could also imagine like rook b5, rook takes c5, or maybe in the right circumstances, you know, your rook's never going to compete with three major pieces on the b file, so no reason to try to get that going. Um, but
And
I want to make one other random point about these major piece endgames. I feel like I haven't put this to play in practice by any means, but I feel like it's a good opportunity to upset a lot stronger players because you get into these endgames with queens and rooks, and you just hang one wrong back rank threat or one wrong deflection, and the game's over. They're not going to recover from a major piece tactic. So I like getting into these positions, and I want to practice them and get very good at them, and also do a lot of tactical puzzles, hopefully that involve these pieces because there's just a lot of you'll analyze this with the engine afterwards, not necessarily this game, but and you'll see cardiograms because there's heavy pieces left. There is tactics, like
yes, no, for sure, and actually, black's problems are compounded by the fact that he never had the time to create Luft, and credits to Mr. Humphreys with the quick a4 a5 attack. It's not clear Mitch would have had a chance to get Luft once rook b8 was played. So he took care of that part of the game well, and here it's hard to find improvements for Mitch. Which, by the way, I think it's important to also note that rook b6 um, does seem better than capturing with the pawn. Both of them probably. I mean, capture the pawn may win, but let's take a look at that. So let's say we play here. Oh no, the back rank strikes again. So now we go here.
Yeah. Yep. And rook
And
a1.
then here,
And you can't take.
and
The
then rook a1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Have the back rank weakness strikes again.
So how it happened in the game? I mean, I need to study my rooking games a ton more because maybe this is just trivial winning for white. But if I was black, I'd be leaning in, thinking I'm going to try to draw this as hard as I can. This is rooking game. Yeah, he's got a dangerous outside passer, but it's a rooking game. Let me try to get as much activity as possible. Unless he's queening that by force, looks like he might be though.
Yeah, this seems very difficult to hold for
rook b7, right?
Rook b7, exactly.
So what's g? Wait, did he have to play g5 there? What if he keeps? You got to keep.
So I think, yeah, here.
But then you're just gonna drop all your.
Maybe
pawns.
it's already too late.
Yeah.
Because the king's on e8, because it's specifically where the king is. Maybe g5 is too late. Now let's see. But the other options are not much better because if you try to play here, so you can be closer to the pawn, then you lose a couple more pawns on the king side.
Yeah.
Plus the threat of rook down to the back rank, nailing its opponent on a8. So it seems as if maybe at this point, black's position's already beyond salvation.
Pass pawns and endgames are pretty valuable.
And so let's see if I think we'll take just a minute to see if there was a better way for black to resist.
We'll put the rook behind the pawn, right? No,
yeah, so
you get mated, but okay, so
you have to create Luft first, and then the question is the Luft option fast enough? So say this happens, and here. And here, does that hold white up long enough for? Does it hold white up long enough for black to get his king into the defense? It might actually.
Looks like a better chance for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a way the rook and pawn can advance on their own.
No, and it'll take a while for the white king to get there. So I think this is an important nugget. This illustrates why it's almost always advised to have your rook behind the enemy pawn.
Yeah, I think that's the only piece of positional knowledge I had as a child. Because I actually I knew literally nothing. I didn't know what a weak square was, anything like that. It was kind of pleasant actually because then in my early 20s when I got a chess.com subscription and watched all the videos from all the grandmasters and like it was just like light bulbs going off left and right.
Yes.
And I knew I was missing that stuff too because I remembered, talking to my opponents who had like Bill Harrison as a coach and like. I'm like, man, these guys know way more than me, but I couldn't afford them as a kid, and so. But anyways, it gives me a throwback. I'm like, even I knew that, you can if you. I feel like that's like something you learn at like 500 rating. It's like put the rook behind the pass pawn, or just put rook behind pawns. It's always right.
It's. Always right, and actually, the same tends to apply when you're the person with the passed pawn. You want to put your rook behind your pawn rather than in front of your pawn. And part of it, if you look at it from um, an I guess efficacy rather than efficiency point of view, is with the rook properly positioned in regards to your own pawn or the enemy pawn, your rook has more flexibility, right? So if you imagine the black rook on a8 instead of a3, it only has one square in front of it from which you can keep the white pawn under control. While from a3, he has four squares along the file that he can play with, besides the a3, of course. And it's not something you need to kind of know consciously, but just putting your rook in the right position, and things tend to work better. So yeah, this might have been a way. I'm not saying it would have necessarily drawn by force, but it was
Well, then,
definitely a better.
is there improved play for white? Because clearly a6 is probably not. Could we just play rook? Hold
So
on. Can we just play rook b5?
yeah,
Try to pick up c5 while protecting our pawn instead of playing a6 here. After he makes left, because there he's getting mated, right?
yeah. So he has to do this, and I would think
Yeah,
that
yeah. Now,
the white should just take the c5 pawn.
yeah. Now don't play a6 and let him play rook a3. Play rook b5, and I'm gonna play rook take c5 and continue to defend my pawn and I'll have two passers.
Exactly. I think that's the better approach for sure.
And those are kind of like
Um,
those are the gap tooth pawns too, so I know they can self support if if the rooks
if
ever got
need be.
traded. If the rooks ever got traded, and if black maybe could think I can trade rooks and get over there. My king can handle those two pawns, but you don't even if your king could never get over to those pawns, you can push them in such a way that the king can never approach.
Mhm. Yeah, so rook b5 is better than a six in that position. You don't want to push your pawn farther than its supply, or be in a hurry to push the pawn if it's now going to hamstring the rest of your army, right? So with the a6 approach, now all of a sudden the rook is tethered to the pawn, other things remaining equal. While with rook b5, now the pawn's close enough that the rook can actually guard both the c4 and a5, and such small details can make the difference between 0, half, and 1 point. Oh, the Torfy game is done. Let's see what
Torfy
happened there.
Torfy brought it home, so that's a good week to profile Torfy when he's got a nice upset against frequent tournament winner Miles. Miles just had a great Minneapolis Open as well, winning 5 games straight to finish the tournament.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, that's an impressive game by Torfy. Yeah, I don't. There are certain positions that I think are Torfy positions. After seeing some of his games and playing against him, if he is given the opportunity to activate his pieces and they start dancing, watch out. He's very dangerous with his control of tactics and with initiative. Um,
This makes me wonder if you could kind of, target Miles though with offbeat stuff, right? We see F4 working against him here, and then we also saw Riker making Perk work. Kind of
oh yeah,
get him out of his comfort zone. Don't let him play his Queen's Indian structure. Um, maybe that's a
yeah.
secret strategy. I don't know.
It might be less. It might be less that they're unconventional, and more that they're provocative. because
Yeah, yeah,
one of the things that caused Miles problems, it just felt like the way he went at it in the opening was, I need to teach Torfi the lesson never to bring that F4 in front of me, right?
yeah,
I'm going to punish you with this from gambit, and I think that made his play maybe a little more loosey goosey than usual, which kind of was what happened in the game, the Pierce game too. I think he, if I'm remembering it properly, I think he also played a bit in trying to be aggressive, played a bit too loosely.
yeah. That's why I have that problem myself. So that's why I try to mitigate it against certain opponents by picking superpositional systems. So against Perk, for example, I play 4G3. Which is
Hmm.
I'm making myself sit on my hands. I'm not gonna play Bishop E3, F3, H4, H5, right? Because that's what they want. That's what they get every game. Although strong players will make them doing that stuff, right? But it's just to me, it's just asking me to put myself in a bad psychological state where I feel obligated to win. Uh,
Yes.
instead, I can just say, hey, you're playing Perk. You're not taking any central space. I'm just gonna take as much central space as I possibly can and sit on my position and try not to trade any minor pieces. And where are you gonna put your pieces, buddy? That's you got four pieces to develop and no space. And
Yeah.
my way, I'm not gonna win in memory, but I'm gonna have a pleasant game and I'm gonna shift that psychological burden onto black on solve some problems. Uh, so that's my way of dealing with kind of dubious things. Try to find a positional way to just sit on a huge center, but at the same time, I do get being tempted for going for the throat. Other things that remind me of it, like I play exchange again. I exchange on d6 against the Alekhine.
Hmm.
People who are really trying to kill that thing play 4 pounds attack.
Yes.
I play Meroxy Biden against Dragon when possible. So
Oh, you're not a Yugoslav guy?
nope, I don't Yugoslav, but I got some pet lines here and there. You know,
Okay.
I got some attacking lines against Caro French, but
Hmm.
those are just the good old days. Anything I'm designing new, got to be positional.
Yes.
So I'm the opposite of
No,
my
this
childhood.
is we continue to learn and continue to change.
All
Uh,
right.
Let me see. So we've got well, we have one more game that's finished, and then we'll go to the games that are still ongoing. We haven't looked at Robert Donahue,
Oh,
which we will get there. Wait a second. Are the clocks correct in the Donahue game? Hold on, let me just run there for a minute.
yeah, it doesn't look right. There's DG. DGT issues with the clocks are pretty common. So I wouldn't
Okay.
anything too strange looking with the clocks. I would just dismiss as DGT issue until
Okay.
unless you see
Yeah, we'll get to this
unless you see
game.
zeros and a game result, then you worry
Hmm.
maybe they flipped. But
Okay. All right. So let's see. So we have Andrew McIntyre versus Joel Kennedy. Do you know much about Mr. Kennedy?
I don't a ton about Joel Kennedy, but I do know Andrew pretty well.
Hmm.
But I need to get to know Joel better. Yeah, but speaking of we learn things and grow. Look, Andrew switched it up. He's no longer playing Polish. He's a ready main, and that's definitely a change I support. So he kind of reminds now we got two people doing Queenside fianchettos. We got Miles and Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, not exact same flavor, but
No, it's similar enough, and I'm liking Andrew's position here. I think he has an undisputed advantage in this position. So at the moment, he has an extra pawn. He also has control of the c file. His king is relatively safe. His bishop is relatively safe. So it doesn't seem as if black has any real compensation for the pawn. And I dare say that move might actually worsen
Oh,
things.
well,
Okay, I'm not happy
bishop.
about that.
I want bishop b4 potentially, but f5, I guess.
Yeah, I don't like e4 there. Although wait, let's see. Let's take a look. Maybe there's more to it than appears.
Yeah, my initial impulse
No,
was
I don't
bishop
like.
b4, but f5 is not seems pretty good against that. So
I would. I mean, it's a style thing. Maybe I would prefer to play this way, but
yeah,
maybe it's not that much of a difference. But okay, the idea being,
okay. Good target.
I'd like to, yeah, I'd like to have a target, and at the same time, as a bonus, if he wants to defend the pawn, this is the only way to defend the pawn directly. And now the rook is babysitting, and then I can play a4, preventing bishop b5, and now the position's under control. I can take my time, activate my king, maybe get my king over to d4 or something like this. But white, it's not a brain dead situation, but white doesn't have to worry about counterplay from black
You know,
in that
this position
position.
is
Yeah.
pretty funny to me because if you go back to with rook on c5 and rook on f6, where you just showed that because the rook is right here. We were just talking about how awesome it is to put a rook behind a pawn, but here
Yes.
the rook behind the pawn is pretty terrible, and the rook to the side of the pawn is looking great. So it just goes to show, chess is hard. It depends upon the
Yes.
position. You can't just play with these dogmatic rules, unfortunately, for my sensibilities. But yeah, because this position, the
Yes.
rook looks
That
terrible, and
is
it's following the rule. You're putting a rook behind a pawn. What could be wrong with that?
so. Now, in some situations, and this is just okay. Of course, this is a different situation, but uh, it's often the case that now the when it comes to your own pawn, right? If I'm thinking about it correctly, the rook behind a pawn makes sense if it's a passed pawn, right? And the pawn on f4, no matter how much makeup and other camouflage you apply, will never be accused of being a passed pawn. So maybe this is why the rule doesn't work in this situation, right?
Makes sense.
Um, but yeah, that would e4 seems. I suppose if you combine e4 with the idea of playing d4 to try and knock out the e5 pawn, I suppose.
But then they'll play f takes and solid chain.
Yeah.
Oh, so here, okay, I'm already seeing some problem from black, honestly, because you're down. Why are you opening lines? You should sit on your position. Don't you think?
Well, I think
I mean, he wants to trade pawns, I guess, but
he wants to trade pawns, which is not a bad idea, and he's also attacking the d3 pawn,
okay.
right? And with this exchange, he's also allowing this guy to get into the action, right? Because he needed to move the bishop out of the way in order for the rook to come over to the queen side. So, okay, I'm not saying it's going to
I can see some
allow
points there.
Joel to turn the game around, but this is definitely, I think, White has problems to worry about now, where he didn't before.
Maybe I'm a little too comfortable just trying to defend pawn down too instead of making the counterplay happen. But I just always feel like in my practice I end up drawing a lot more often just suffering down the pawn than I do trying to go crazy.
Well, in this position, if you do a quick count, you'll see that by playing actively, Joel's managed to equalize material.
Amazing. So proven
Yeah,
proven my strategy wrong, honestly.
I mean, well, it's a temporary thing. I think he might have actually helped his case further when in this position after here, you capture on G3 first. Most likely, White plays here, and now you play this. That way, you're not allowing White to create a weak pawn on F4. So the way the game went, after Rook B2, now White is able to exchange on F4, which creates the weakness on F4. And it's a weakness that the king can get to, given enough time, as we saw in the game. So this is an important detail, I think. Had he captured on G3, maybe he improves his chances in the game. But now, okay, we're back to White being a pawn up. And it's not just any pawn. Actually, this position is now looking rather nice for White.
Yeah, got another pawn fixed on A4 to target.
Pawn on A4 to target, and the rook is running out of squares here. Oh my word! What's it gonna do?
Gotta move the bishop.
He can't escape.
I'll move the bishop.
So he needs to move the bishop right away, maybe to D7. And then after king C3, then maybe he has to go back, say, to here, so that he can answer this with this. But then, okay, king B2 probably happens. Sorry, not king. King B2 happens, and White's winning with the extra 2 pawns. But he definitely needed to create room for the rook, regardless. And yeah,
reminds me of our 3-time state champions Lee chess handle, trapped piece. So
yes,
I feel like that's a good way to win a classical chess game is trapping a piece. Always, I feel like it's a common way to win a classical chess game as well.
yes. Always be aware of your piece's safety, and that includes its mobility. If it once it becomes immobile or less mobile, then it's less safe.
And that is a big difference from blitz chess, in my opinion. I don't feel like trap pieces happen tons in blitz because people are mostly looking to check captures, and yeah, you can look at trapping pieces, but you got to calculate, you got to see if there's any way that the piece can escape. But you're in a classical game, you got no problem trying to calculate if that piece can escape or not, and if it can't, you're going for it.
Yep, pretty much. So let's see, where do we go next? Oh, on board 2, we have a completed game. Let's see what's going on there, or what happened there. So Connor Weatherly on the white pieces and Ethan Hunt behind the black pieces. And we start off with a center game.
Nice. So I did study this with Connor, and this is my main opening. I'm definitely going to criticize Ethan playing d6 here. D6 gives White a totally free hand. Yep, d6 gives White a totally free hand, because basically what's going to happen now is White can focus on preventing d5, and then they'll just roll their kingside pawns for a free attack, pretty much. And when you're So yeah, I think in my future chess career, I want to play Ruy Lopez, but I will still look at their games, and if they play d6 every game against center game for some random reason, I'll probably play center game
Hmm.
that day because
Okay.
yeah, you play knight d2. I mean, not immediately, but you play knight d2, knight f4 to help prevent them breaking with d5 later with like bishop e6, d5, and
I mean,
you
knight e2, knight f4.
yep, knight e2. Sorry, yep,
Okay. Okay.
and
Okay. Huh.
the whole point of center game is white is not developing the kingside pieces at all, so they're able to get that pawn storm rolling, right? And so it's kind of playing into their hands
Yeah.
a little bit.
Okay.
And then if you think about it, when your opponent flank attacks you, then you're supposed to break in the center, right? So he's supposed to break d5, but if you've already played d6, you're just slow, And so the real way to beat up on center game is you play bishop b4 and d5. That's a real critical way, and you can actually
Hmm.
black will actually be better if they play perfectly that way. But a real simple way, which I'm outing myself, probably my own opening, but you just play instead of d6, you play okay. So the real and bishop d2 is kind of cagey because you're trying to trick people because they're used to people playing knight c3, bishop b4, bishop d2, right? And then they play,
Hmm.
and so here you might get some people trying to play bishop b4, anyways, trying to transpose to the line they know instead of d6. And here you can play knight c3 to transpose to the main line, or else you also can think about playing a3 and knight takes d2, and that can throw them out of their prep, right? Oh, our people are supposed to have more than one
Oh.
line against center game. It's not fair, man. I play bishop b4 against knight c3. That's what I do. And but anyways, so it's kind of you could tell the Connor's playing some move order tricks, but then back it up a little bit. Let's just go into the main line. Let's say instead of playing a3, they played knight c3, because I just want to show people the brain dead way that yeah. And now kingside castle, queenside castle. Okay, yeah. And the real critical line is goes rook e8 then d5, right? But so with that weird move order, you kind of can't do it. But a real actual way to do it easier, if people played a normal knight c3 move order, is you play bishop e7 and then d5 fast. So sorry, yeah,
Oh.
this is kind of
So I
contrived, but
mean, like,
let's say instead of playing bishop d2, he just played knight c3 like a normal center game player, like they mostly play. And now the huge way to punish them is bishop b4. But if you just want to chill out and you're not well studied, which then you just play bishop e7 here, and now you play for I'm not exactly sure the move
for
order, but
d5.
you play either castles then d5 or you play d5 quickly. But in any case, you want to play d5 quickly in one move.
So say bishop d2 happens.
Yeah, and I think
Now, can you play d5 immediately?
probably just goes castles and then play d5. Makes
Okay.
some
So
sense.
castles, and then d5.
Yep. So this is
Aha.
to all you e5 mains. This is how I'd recommend. This is how if I was an e5 main, I would handle center game probably. Just because, yeah,
Wow.
bishop b4, rook e8, d5 is extremely good, but you know, it's like playing bishop g5 against a knight orf or something. It's going to be just totally crazy. And this is just chill. You end up with a normal position. You equalize.
And I guess notice that with bishop e7, it's doing a couple of different things. So, okay, getting ready to castle, but also means that an e takes d5 isn't coming with check because the vis-a-vis has been blocked, right? Um, where with bishop b4, you probably have to castle first before d5. Otherwise, this just gives up a whole bunch of material. for nothing.
Yeah, and I do want to make some points in favor of center game too, because there's a good reason too that it's so good actually in practice. Because booked up players who know you're a main will prep against you, and then it's a terrible scenario. If you're getting super prepped against because you play center game every game, it's not going to work. But against the blitz pool, it's super good
Hmm.
because what ends up happening is exactly that dynamic Miles we saw from Miles this week. They think an E5 player who sees center game, their blood boils. They just think to themselves, "This is trash. I need to crush this guy." But they haven't actually studied anything, and then
Yes.
they'll try to do it by hand, and then it's not one of those openings. It's not one of those openings where you can just do whatever by hand. It's not like Joe Baba London or something. I'm not saying that's you can easily there, but
Hmm.
Joe Baba London, you've got 12 options. They're all good. Center game, you have two lines. You you have Bishop B4 D5 and you have Bishop B7 D5. If you're not playing one of those two plans as black, everything else is just you're gonna get massacred, and so many players do stuff like that. What they'll also do is tons of players play B6 Bishop F5 to hit that Queen E3 because it just looks nice, it looks cool. But
Hmm.
you play Queen G3, you hit G7, and you're about to threaten Knight D5, forking C7. You end up winning in memory. So you end up in the blitz pool. You
Hmm.
win so many games in memory if you play this a lot. And then I think I have a 70+ % win rate with center game and blitz. And then I'm trying to pick up Rui. I got Rui much better opening objectively, but I got that 40% win rate there because it's opposite. It's instead of administering a
No, it's
memory test, I'm trying to pass memory tests, and
yes.
but I don't think it's good for your long term chess to administer memory tests though. Honestly, like it's just you're not. It's not going to work against really good players, and so okay, it's basically like a noob killer. So I am trying to move away from it myself, but it'll always probably hold a place in my heart considering I won so much with it online.
Yes. No, there's a friend of mine. He plays he used to. I don't think he plays it as much now, but he used to play the Suntra game, and I see him scoring miniatures against strong players too, like master level players, and because again they don't take it seriously. I think in terms of preparing for it, and you get if you're not prepared for it, yeah, it has this deceptive feel. Well, I don't need to know anything concrete. I can just play normal chess and then squash it like a bug. And it doesn't seem as if that's the case.
No, but yeah, it's definitely not something you should respect either as black. I mean, it's e5. There's no way e5 players should be upset to see center game. I mean,
Let's
it's
let's let's correct that. Um, a well prepared black player should not be scared.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's probably a
yes,
more accurate.
yes, and that's the true of all of chess, right? And I'm the biggest center game advocate myself, so I kind of am, I feel like I can be critical of it because I play it, but I see the downsides. But there's more upsides than downsides, honestly, if you're just playing it as a general tool. But
Hmm.
I don't really see myself. I could see myself getting targeted extremely effectively if I played it every game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems like at higher levels, they'll probably maybe there's a better chance of being punished. Ethan's in trouble here. He's a pawn down, and besides the pawn on b3, every other white unit is better than their black counterpart.
Yeah, and
Every single one.
we know Ethan's good at endgames, but Connor's pretty much endgame strength, I'd say. Eh, it's a mix. He's calculation strength, and there's a lot of calculation in endgames. So
Hmm. Yeah, this is Connor did the job here. So the mistake came. Well, the mistake came earlier in the game because once he gets to this position, um, she's doing very well. I think once if White were promised this position every single game, they'd probably be 2,800
yeah,
fairly soon. Right.
no, and
So,
it's tough.
uh,
Ethan probably just didn't study this, and that makes perfect sense. And D6 seems normal. And
mhm,
that is why this is such a practical opening because everything that seems normal by hand is not working out.
yes. All right. Let's go over see what's going on with Kyler and Nate Hoover. Okay, this is a game that you probably would enjoy. They're going
Nightorf.
into the Open Sicilian.
Yeah, I don't know much
Wow.
about.
All
I
right.
don't see. I don't know much about this. Is too intense for me. I go bishop b2.
Wow. Talk about going for the sharp stuff. Definitely an uncompromising approach.
Okay, and it looks like Kyler. Look at the time use. Nathan's been tanking already, and Kyler's playing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's
Now,
even though I don't know anything about
you know,
this, that seems optimistic for White in a sharp position like this.
yes. Um, it seems I'm going to have to probably consult the database on this one because it seems like bishop takes f6 is giving too much away, although bishop h4 kind of has a weird feel to it as well. So, well, okay,
Here's
bishop
here's
takes
a,
f6.
here's a theory I have too on that because you could see there's a ton of. I mean, there's twice as many master games in bishop h4 as bishop takes f6, but I feel like
Mm-hmm,
when people are preparing lines, a lot of times, if they see any master games in a line that's concrete and forcing, they like to go for it
mm-hmm,
because then they can get that same tabia against multiple opponents.
mm-hmm.
Versus if you're a little stronger, you maybe just want to keep things flexible because you want to give your opponent more chances to make mistakes. But so I do think it's fairly common to see if there's two master moves and one of them's forcing, I think club level players a lot of times like to choose the forcing move.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a position. So, um, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything wrong with taking the pawn on g5 first before playing f5. So, capture, I assume capture. Um, and maybe you don't even need to play f5. Maybe just play here. Although, is f5 working here? It's not clear. It just seems like playing this immediately. Well, in
Let's see.
hindsight, what exactly is wrong with it? I mean, I like the idea of exchanging off those rooks, or at least,
Yeah, I mean, look at bishop c8. It's hard to imagine black
yeah,
open its queenside fast enough for you to. I like taking. I like
it,
taking. I just like hg5 because
yeah,
I want to trade rooks and maybe play queen h2.
exactly.
But we do got to remember
And this is
these plays are tanking and calculating, and we're looking at it superficially. So
yes,
f5 might, and this is board one. These are these guys are no slouches. So let's f5 probably had
exactly.
some ideas as well.
No, but I think if you're going to play even if you're going to play f5, I think one advantage of capturing here, even if you're eventually going to play f5, one advantage of doing it this way might be that it's harder for the bishop to get activated. I suppose the bishop can probably do this though, and here eventually, although he has to deal with the threat to e6 right now. And if he plays knight e5 to deal with that threat, then the bishop doesn't get e5. Okay. But okay, so this was played, and we get an interesting strategical fight. Black castled onto the queen side as well, which makes sense. And now he's trying to...
Look, we get. I'm seeing that queen vulnerable on a5 again.
Yeah,
Reminded me of Jason's game.
the king wisely goes
Yeah,
away.
just we need that knight to be able to move with tempo somehow. But even now, maybe you never know. I'm sure he calculated a bit, but what about instead of bishop e2? It's not going to work, right? But we can think about at least knight d5, queen takes queen, make sure there's no
Mm-hmm.
intermezzo moves with that knight that are awesome. Yeah, knight b6. Unfortunately, let's play king a7. We got to recapture the
Yeah.
queen, but you can already start to think about moving that knight for tactics because queen a5 is vulnerable.
So this is an interesting move. Um, Offering an exchange of queens as well as a knight. Let's see. Hmm.
Hold on. I'm not understanding bishop d2. Just to reveal what takes g4, I guess. Well, and I guess
Yeah, to reveal. Yeah.
he's rook e1 is tied to defending knight e6.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's a little classy. I like that by Nathan. That's some class.
Yeah, that was a
That's a
nice.
classical chess move. Where I don't need to defend things conventionally because your piece is already busy doing a job.
Yep. Now white looks like he's trying to get something going here, but is that? Oh, because the bishop on d2 still hanging. Okay, got it. So, oh wow.
Man, this is looking scary for
For
black.
yeah,
I'm
black
seeing this.
is
I'm seeing those knights and rooks are working. You'd think bishops and rooks work together, but hey, that's a piece, right? So this is
mhm.
also this is not like this somewhat promising position is without risk here. I could see this turning around quickly if Because yeah, now I was really just seeing doubled rooks and working in tandem with the knight, but he prevented that with bishop g5. So I mean, now I'm kind of
Yeah,
not buying it and liking black.
yeah. Black seems to be somewhat for choice here. Okay, so bishop c4, and now
Yeah,
we're in
nice.
a simplified position.
Got it. That was clever. He threatened the rook on f7 with the bishop, so he couldn't play knight takes rook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're piece up and only one pawn left.
Yep.
But still, you gotta imagine this is winning.
It would seem to be because once the other rook gets in,
Yeah. Yeah, now you've already got two.
um,
You got rook f3 and rook f2 as big threats.
yep.
And what's
And this is the current position with White trying to figure things out here. All right, let's take a look at Robert Donahue and Norman. The Stonewall. Oh, no, hold on a
okay?
second.
It's a reverse Carlsbad.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Is there a lecture coming up
more.
on that
Yeah,
sometime?
yeah, yeah. That's the. Although we are gonna do probably just a starter on the Carlsbad, and then he's got some general middle game lessons.
Okay.
So we'll probably do the first half hour Carlsbad, and then strategic middle games. The second two lectures, we'll see on that a little bit up in the air on the specific content, but we will have some Carlsbad content for sure.
Now, this is an interesting. Remember, I think it was the second game we looked at, where there's a question of that was Eddie versus Jason, and Jason was moving forward with his pawns on the king side, and there was a question brought. Okay, do we let the pawns roll, or do we try to stop them somewhere along the way? And this is another good example of that. And here,
Yeah, I don't like H3. I feel like I've seen
yeah,
G3 as a whole now.
hmm and so it's often important to take into consideration what positives and what negatives every single pawn move brings to the table. So this square now becomes a nice juicy outpost especially if white decides to castle kingside.
Yep, White's position looking like Swiss cheese, as Zakara would say.
Yes. And one other thing about, because I was trying to see if I could find um, a pun to go along with that, but I failed. It would be too cheesy.
Uh,
So uh, let's see. Okay. Except that maybe that's not. Actually, this is an interesting thing. I forgot this was Robert Donahue playing the Black Pieces. Um,
it's about to. Is he sacked anything yet?
no, it was looking too normal. That's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Roberts actually turned a new leaf. I think he told Eddie he almost got to his floor, and then he won a bunch of games at the Minneapolis Open, and he told Eddie that now he's got to just go back to playing high quality chess because he didn't hit his floor. So
Okay.
I think he's back. He's back to business, to my current
All right.
knowledge.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So now you got to be scared of underrated Roberts playing normal positional chess against you, and you're like, hey man,
Hmm
get the rating back first, and then play the solid chess against me.
So this is an interesting sequence here. Okay, so you come on here. Um, Norman finds this tactic. Unfortunately, the tactic doesn't maintain the pawn edge. And in fact, if anything, black is probably for choice here, even with the capture of the pawn on h4, only because white's development is not really that great. And every move is coming with a tempo. So g5, the pawn can't take because that'll allow a queen exchange on f. So put it on the board here. Bang, 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 and thank you.
Looking vulnerable there. Yep, we see another queen trade involved in a tactic. It just seems to those queens are potent, but they're also just they're a burden. They're like, man, they can be attacked by lesser pieces, and they can be overloaded defending pieces when they really don't want to be defending any bishop e3. They want to be doing better things. But
Yes. So Robert's showing a nice grasp of the position. And he allowed d5.
yeah, that's strange to me. King b8 allowing d5 does not seem intuitive.
No. I mean, there's some method to madness, but I don't know that.
Okay, now he's playing down an exchange. I mean, he's got a pawn for it, but it seemed totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'd rather have the white pieces, honestly.
Yes. I think white is definitely for choice here.
Exchange is an exchange after all. And the rooks are actually going to do something on this open board. Look at all these open lines for the rooks to actually do work. If I'm gonna sack an exchange, I want it to be the early middle game or late middle
Mm-hmm.
game and I want to see my opponent's rooks looking terrible. Usually I think that's a good way you can evaluate an exchange sack. Is basically like you look at the opponent's rooks, and if they're not going to do anything at all for a long time, maybe. But if you look at them and both rooks are moving to open files quickly, I don't think so. But hey, it always depends on the position, and chess is complicated.
Yes.
But I think people are a little too eager to sack an exchange to get a beautiful game. And
Hmm.
wow, Norm though playing great chess lately.
Yeah, I'm impressed. He's handling the technical part of the game very well. Oh, wait a second.
Ooh, isn't that a fork?
Yeah, I'm wondering.
What?
Well, I'm wondering about rookie 8. Oh, that's a check, isn't it?
But isn't 95 just losing the rook?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. That's what happened in the game. Um,
that's just winning for black, right? Or no,
yeah, I think that's.
ooh.
Well, yeah, it's winning for black. It's winning for black after
So
95.
it's looking like a one move blunder in the middle of a
Of what was
winning conversion. It's brutal.
exactly.
It's like the worst thing that happened. This is like the biggest tragedy that can happen in chess.
Yes. I mean, I was looking at this and wondering if um, if there was any salvation for uh, for black after this.
I feel like when I'm in a conversion mode like this too, all I'm doing is blunder checking. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's so I would yeah. I feel like I get even more paranoid because I'm like I'm winning. I need to win this. When I'll blunder
Yeah.
I'll blunder a knight fork like that because I'll blunder stuff like that. But usually I'm in a very tough position, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to avoid another issue, and I don't notice that. But I feel like when
Yeah,
you're
95.
your end game
Yeah.
conversion, you gotta lock in, you gotta blunder check every move. Just
Mm-hmm.
lock in your next move in your mind, and then just ask, what are my opponent's checks and captures?
You might
Just
even want to do that in the opening and the middle game,
Yeah, you could do it every
in
move,
addition to
really.
the ending.
Do it every move,
Yes.
but especially in a winning ending, right? Uh,
Yes.
because
Yeah. No. If you're completely lost, maybe the stakes aren't as high. But even when you're completely lost, still do the blunder check, because you never know when your opponent refuses to do their blunder check, and all of a sudden you get back into the game like this, right? Because I think we both agreed that at this point, Robert might have been within his rights to resign
wait,
at
so
this point.
wait, and it's white to move here.
So
Well,
was
hold on, where,
sorry.
where?
So he came to this point here, and White escaped the checkmate by moving over. Sorry, Black escaped the checkmate by moving to the side,
Got it.
and this is where White.
Yeah,
Um,
for a second there, I thought he played Rook D3 instead of playing Mate in one. I was like, oh, that would be
oh yeah,
that
no, so he,
that would be the bigger tragedy.
that would be bad.
No, but honestly,
Um,
Norm, you feel terrible though. Norm played an awesome game here. He really
yeah,
deserved to win this one, but chess is cruel, and you got to pay close attention. And also, Robert actually did deserve to win because he stayed tactically alert, and that's what happens. That's how you actually win chess games. But if we just think about it from a principled, strategic perspective,
yeah. I
Norm
mean, I think
made it happen this game.
if we think of it from the uh, chess morality point of view, well, you stole the game.
Yeah,
Nah, chess morality is if you play the last important mistake, then you deserve to lose.
yep.
That's the morality. The rest of the game, and I get it because as a kid, it was one of those things you see. Soccer is a good example where one team is just dominating and playing the best quality soccer, best passes, best shots on goal to the opponent's one, but they missed their 20. The opponent scored their one,
Hmm.
right?
But chess,
And
chess is
oh, it's against the run of play. Yeah.
chess is more brutal than soccer though, because if they're up 10-0, there's no way the other team can win ever. But you can be up 10-0 in chess, and your opponent can still win.
Yes. Quite right. So yeah, this is going to be a very difficult defense for Kyler, but it's not a trivial win
Well,
for Nathan either. I suppose
it's
he could make progress by playing Rook F3 and then H3.
it's looking way better for Kyler than it was a few moves ago with two rooks on, and his king about to get mated.
Yes.
Um, but I mean,
So yes.
why can't you just try to advance the passed pawn?
Um, I
Just
think
use the bishop and rook to make it happen. Just rook f3, h3, and then you can
so.
even
Let's look at that. So Rook F3. Oops. Oh, he plays there. Let's go back and look at Rook here and King here. And what's going on here? So now, if we try for this, maybe there's this. Oh, but then there's this. And King, I don't know, goes here and then here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Rook F3 seemed like it was likely a valid way of
Well,
making progress.
I don't really want to bother with white's pawns. I feel like that's how white's going to get drawing chances. I want to just shove my pawn through and force, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So, all right, well, let's see what actually happened in the game. So, I guess I should point out both players, of course, at this time of night, are low on time. So, I'm not
But
expecting.
yeah, I did wonder with that variation you just showed if there's any chance white could trade rooks and run his king to the corner, but because it is the opposite color bishop.
Oh, I
You
thought
know, he's too
that
far.
he was.
He's a square
He's
away.
outside the square.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
but
outside the square.
if the king was in the square, it might be able to. Although I
Yes.
actually lost to Robert just like that because I tried to do that at the end, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the bishop and the pawn can kind of keep the king out even
Yes.
if you do it cleverly. You know, the king can't really if the king is already on h1, fine, but they'll leave the pawn on h3, and you know use the bishop and pawn to prevent the king from approaching it or
For
approaching
approaching it. Yes.
h1 properly.
Yes. Create a kind of force field that the
Yeah,
king can't pass
and
through.
but they do have the he in that situation he does have the two passed pawns on the other side, so maybe he couldn't bring his king in properly. You never know.
True. Yeah. But yeah, this is going to be a bit of a fight. I think, did they repeat? Okay, so rook b2, king there, rook there. Okay, so they're not repeating yet, but um, oh, maybe Nathan is saying I'm going to win one of those pawns.
Yeah, this is on camera too, so we're seeing this play out live, blitz mode, 2 minutes versus one. Yeah, I do want to commentate on how nice it is, how strong of players we're getting. If we look at the first two boards, especially, we got almost four national masters. Connor not quite there, but if he goes 5-0 this month, there's a good chance he'll make national master in this month's tournament. So pretty cool to see so many national masters playing on Thursdays. Thank you guys for playing. Nice to have such a strong field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is this is tough. It's tough for both players. I should uh, complete the sentence that it's tough for both players.
Yeah, well now he's picking up the pawn, so I mean this seems easier now.
Yes.
This seems on the way to,
Well,
but I mean he's not going to
there's an
lose.
interesting there's an interesting thing here. Yeah, if king f3,
Yeah, he's going for
and then if
that.
he tries to go for the pawn, then rook h6 might win the bishop. Let's see how that's working. So if this happens, then here.
Got it.
So
And also,
and if the king checks, then we just dance around. Just make sure he can't get to f4 to help defend the bishop. So Tyler might have been setting a trap for Nathan there,
maybe I play like
or might be.
bishop e7. Maybe just I want to defend my pawn.
Yes,
And
that's what happens. Bishop e7 is what happens in the game, and now the pawns are in danger of being lost. But importantly, Tyler's got his king within the square of that h pawn. So if he can somehow exchange off rooks.
Yeah, I don't see why Nathan doesn't need to though. There's no reason to.
Yeah, if Kyler can find a way to exchange off rooks, then then he can get the draw.
Yeah, I feel like you just win. You win both pawns though. You leave the situation how it currently is, and you bring your king over to the king side, and you say,
Mm-hmm.
"Now I'm going to start making mating threats if you're going to try to keep your king in the corner, and maybe I'll use my bishop to defend my king from checks as well as I need to. But I can't imagine you're not going to be able to create mating threats to force the king out of the corner with the rook and bishop, and then from there maybe you can. I don't see why you need to trade rooks to convert this. I feel like you can create enough threats with rook on, but engine might just scream
No,
zeros.
no. My point was not that Nathan wants to exchange rooks. It's that Kyler should want to exchange rooks. So if he's given the opportunity to exchange rooks, he should probably jump at it because his king is close enough
Yeah,
to stop the H pawn. Um,
there's a
and so
chance.
the question is, can Nate avoid the exchange? And so, how's he responding to this pawn move?
I mean, king b6 seems logical.
So let's look at that. So king b6, rook check. Now king where? If king back,
Yeah, I guess
there, or king here, whichever one. Now I have this.
Yeah, so maybe king c5 instead.
But if king c5, we exchange off rooks. Right? If
Where? Oh,
if
got it.
king here, if the king comes to either c5 or c7, they will exchange off rooks, and we get our draw.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yep.
So, okay, maybe we'll see this in real life. Oops. Let me get to the actual game position.
Yes.
Okay. So now the question is...
Well, he's ready to answer
Is
rook
a5
a7
enough?
with rook c7.
What do you say?
He was ready to answer rook a7 with rook c7.
Mm-hmm. So it's not trivial. And with no time on the clock, it's pretty... It doesn't look like Nate was conducting a simul tonight. Or was he?
I'm not sure. Yeah, this is not how the ending was hoping to go for black.
Mm-mm.
But
Now,
it does still
Rook...
look promising for black to me. I mean, a lot closer than it
It's
was
going to
before.
be... It's going to be very, very difficult for black, I think. I think rook h7, forcing the king to the back rank, seems to be the next thing. Let's see. Yeah, maybe rook here, and where should black put the king? Or blocking is bad, so he has to move the king somewhere. Rook h7 was played in the game, and so the king has to go to the back rank, and then the next question is, where to place the pawns next. Okay,
Oh, he
draw.
trades rooks. Okay.
Yep.
I can see that he's worried about it getting out of control some way.
And losing on time. Right, because that I think he played that with like 6 seconds left on his clock.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
nice resilience by Kyler.
yeah. Now he can just shuffle between H1 and G2
Yep.
till the cows come home.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's not being cold blooded with it. I would just go right for the corner. And look your opponent in the eyes and be like, bro, it's done.
Yep.
I only make a power play like that if really it's really dead, because otherwise I'll end up blowing it later, and then I'll feel like a moron.
Actually, Kyler's approach is a bit more cold-blooded.
Okay.
Because I mean, okay, it's all about style, right? And in this situation, he's telling Nate, "You can't capture my pawn on A5, and if your king tries to get too close to my pawns,
Yeah.
you have to be concerned about me playing A6 or B6."
Yeah, this is better.
So
This is better, of course. But you want to just showcase that they can't win,
mhm. Yes, yes.
because there is literally no way to mess it up. Just
This position um, reminds me of, I can't remember where it was, or maybe it's a good thing because I don't want to necessarily wreck the reputation in case they've improved since then. There was some place I went to go eat, and I've always thought that one food item that must be very difficult to get wrong is shrimp, right? And somehow they managed to do the shrimp bad. It's just, yeah. So that's it would require that kind of skill to lose as white now.
yeah. I wouldn't put it past myself, but I think I'd even I would draw this one, even if I was playing against Connor, wouldn't matter.
But it's looking simple now, but we need to remember the skill Kyler had to show in order to get to this position in the first place.
Well, this one is a dead draw, so let me do the closeout ads here. Let's just repeat a couple of these. So we do have the training camp coming up, May 30th. New Bear is going to be visiting, and 5-hour training camp. Carlsbad to start, and then we're going to do middle game concepts. We got a lot of strong players there, and pretty much everyone who's involved with the YouTube channel will be there. So I'll be there, Oki will be there, Michael Perry will be there, Dane will be there. You have Connor there if you've seen him on the channel, Eddie. So pretty much
Draw it, read.
the who's who of the YouTube channel will be at this event. So definitely check it out if you guys want to meet New Bear while he's in town, because we'll definitely be having New Bear back on weekend tournaments in the future. Then following is we're going to have this cool Minnesota's Masters match inaugural between 3-time state champion Sammy versus our visiting I Am New Bear. So we're basically going to get to see a pro match of two 90 plus 30 games, FIDE rated. So both of them on the hunt for GM at this point, and it's nothing much cooler than seeing a truly professional match, especially with Minnesota's most promising player. So check that out, and if you want to play in the tournament alongside, we'll be broadcasting that, by the way, so you guys can all watch the pro match on broadcast on May 30th and June 1st. But if you want to see that match live, you can also play in the return think itself. National Master OK here will be playing in the main section of the return think, and so you might get a chance to play against him. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun event, training camp, and then a pro match paired with our weekend tournament. So come check it out. All these events, you can sign up for them like a normal tournament on the website, or use these QR codes in the flyers. So we hope to see a lot of you guys at the training camp in Simul. It should be a fun time. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Is there anything else you wanted to close out with any of the games?
No, I think the games are pretty well, they always are interesting. I kind of liked the fight in this very last game quite a bit. It was easy enough for Kyler to throw up his hands and say, "Okay, no mas," and he kept fighting and looking for chances, and I think that's very admirable for all of us to have that never quit attitude.
Yep, nice job.
The yes, the Eddie game. Well, Eddie doing Eddie things, but um, the upset of the night, I think, definitely Torfy, and I think it's in some ways appropriate that the featured player lets us see him playing featured chess. Yeah, so
Yeah, I was happy to see Connor win too. I think that might be the first time I've seen Ethan lose. I'm not sure, but
oh, you might be right.
nothing against Ethan at all. But Connor is very close to Masters, so would love to see him do a 5-0 this month and finally make that title. Definitely feels like he's got the strength. So
I'm going to see.
like
So,
a
what
matter
is
of
the?
time.
I'm just taking a peek to see if I can check out the current standings.
Yeah, it's
And
not
it's
always the easiest to tell on the broadcast
oh,
because
okay.
they don't always end up on DGT. But here, let me.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably have to just pull those up next week before we start. But yeah, you can always check on the Chess Castle website. That's probably the best spot because there's Thursday Nighter News in the top, and then it has the standings. Oh, well, it looks like we lost OK. Oh, he's back.
All right.
We lost you for a second. You're back, but I think we're closing out anyways here. So
Okay.
the format's a little messed up, so maybe let's just say our goodbyes here.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Thank you guys. OK, I'll be back next week with Michael. So tune in next week. And yeah, again, hope to see you guys at the training camp. It's going to be a fun time. So see you next week. And thanks for viewing. Appreciate you guys.